with some 70% of Britons now saying that Brexit is going badly. The overwhelming number of people think that the government that was democratically chosen by the people is doing a bad job.
It went so swimmingly well that actually the guy in charge of Brexit felt he had to immediately resign. The Foreign Secretary immediately resigns. A load of other people immediately resign. Chequers, to me, summed up this whole 2-3 year farce. It's been a complete and utter shambles. And the people responsible are the politicians who are now having all the debates they should have been having before the referendum.
But we did.
We should not be still discussing what happens with the Irish border now, 2 years after the referendum.
I mean, who? Who could have seen this coming? Oh, right. Maybe it wasn't so much Project Fear, but Project, for God's sake, don't drive the bus into a ditch. We've entered what you might call the kinetic phase of the Brexit car crash, where the wheels really aren't in contact with the ground anymore, and it's not quite clear whether the car will end up in a ditch or off the end of a cliff, but there really isn't much you can do about it at this point. Maybe it's time to revisit this and to remind all those who I tried to warn about the car wreck, to catch up with those who spent months calling me salty. Because at the time I was actually more amused than salty, because I knew, just like with a load of the other bullshit I've called out, that within a year or so, you'd be needing that salt to eat humble pie.
This is all very doable.
It may be doable, it's just not doable by the end of March. I mean, there is literally nobody who believes this is doable by the end of March. So the question is, what do we do now?
Failing.
Ladies and gentlemen, dare to dream that the dawn is breaking on an independent, united kingdom.
OK, we are in a mess, no question.
Yep. I have to say, with the anniversary coming up tomorrow of that referendum, I feel pretty bitterly disappointed.
This will be a victory for real people, a victory for ordinary people, a victory...
You're saying that where we are in terms of this half in, half out is worse than being in the EU?
Of course.
Let June the 23rd go down in our history as our Independence Day!
Where we will, for the foreseeable future, after March the 29th, actually be in a worse position than we were before we voted to leave.
But what if your legacy
if we reach a
is a Horlicks of a Brexit?
If we leave, if on March the 29th next year we leave the treaties, even if it is a bad deal, even if we're in a rotten place, we will historically have left the treaties.
Obviously along the lines that we're going to leave at the end of March, but exactly what will change in a year's time?
So, on Brexit Day itself, the UK will be legally out of the EU, but it will still be a part of lots of EU structures, and so daily life will carry on pretty much the same.
Isn't it funny? When I came here 17 years ago, and I said that I wanted to lead a campaign to get Britain to leave the European Union, you all laughed at me.
And I was racking my brains for what will actually be different. And I think the only physical difference you can point to is that Theresa May won't have to go to EU summits anymore, and there'll be no MEPs, there'll be no Nigel Farage standing up in the European Parliament.
Where we will, for the foreseeable future, after March the 29th...
Well, I have to say, you're not laughing now, are you?
...actually be in a worse position than we were before we voted to leave.
The scale of this is just truly staggering. On the scale of other bullshit that I busted, I mean, this is minimalistically on the scale of every single occupant in the UK buying a Juicero. That's the sort of level that we're on.
So in terms of paying to leave, I don't think that there is any kind of paying to leave. We're going to be gaining by leaving. We've seen today that there are...
You believe the boss?
There's talk of borrowing 50 billion to leave, in order to leave the EU.
You're absolutely right. And this figure of 50 billion doesn't have any legal basis whatsoever. It's been manufactured. And it doesn't seem likely that there will be such a bill for £50 billion. It's part of Project Fear. Health warning, don't believe it.
Do we owe the EU some money morally? Yes, we do. We owe some expenditure out to 2020. We owe some ongoing pension commitments. Against that, we have...
How much is that amount, do you think?
that would be, in terms of what we owe, morally, not legally, but morally.
No, morally.
25 billion.
We pay into the European Investment Bank, and so actually we're going to get a windfall from leaving. So I think that the scaremongering about having to pay to leave is just not true. We have a lot to gain.
So what we're going to get out of this is a pretty poor deal. We're paying in vast sums of money, was it 40, 50, maybe 100 billion, who knows. And there's no guarantee we get any kind of acceptable trade deal at the end of it, and it may actually be a rather poor trade deal. So I think that
our best days lie ahead, and we're going to be enjoying the freedoms and enjoying the benefits that we gain from leaving.
You know, if you were serious about Brexit, there was a right way to do it. The right way would have been to have an informed debate, to make a plan, a roadmap, to get overwhelming support of the people, some 2/3, as is common when your country is making a big choice like this. Then do it. Not have a campaign that deliberately left out important details like the destination and a roadmap. As amazing as it sounds, it's not only not clear what the destination was it going to be like Norway or Switzerland?
Wouldn't it be terrible if we were like Norway and Switzerland, really?
Outstandingly Norway?
They're rich.
Because only a madman would actually leave the market.
They're happy.
We have a great independent future, just as countries like Norway and Switzerland enjoy.
Or is it going to involve leaving the common market?
I'd vote to stay in the single market. I'm in favour of the single market. I want us to be able to trade freely with our European friends.
Yeah, not only was there no clear destination, but there was no plan how to get there. Because as Nigel Farage, Mr. Brexit himself said, he didn't want to confuse the simple voter with details like what they were actually voting for, else he might lose.
Okay, why didn't you, the face of Brexit over years, why didn't you deliver a roadmap?
Because they wouldn't use me, they wouldn't talk to me.
Yeah, but why didn't you publicly talk about a roadmap during the campaign?
Because to do that during a campaign, as Alex Salmond learned in the Scottish referendum, deflects everybody away from what the main question is. You know, the main question is, do you vote to stay or remain? Not, you know, if we started to put forward what the alternative plans were, that it would have all got lost in the weeds. It wouldn't have worked. You know, a referendum.
Seriously, Nigel, if you didn't think that the British people were capable of understanding important details, you know, like basing their vote on an actual roadmap.
It has, you know, in your view, gone pretty catastrophically badly, that there's a terrible haul it's made of it. I just want you to go back and just
look.
If you had your time again, what would you do
differently? I argued for an Australian-style point system on immigration.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I'm sure, Nigel, if we'd only put the Australian-style point-based system into the proposal, everything would be fine with Brexit now. Yeah, I can see why you didn't want to talk about a roadmap. You're kind of acting more like a used car salesman. You know, don't worry about the mileage or the maintenance. All you need to know is this car is wonderful, powered by unicorns, and you should buy it. And of course, Nigel never had any plan on how he was going to deliver this unicorn-powered car, which is why he and virtually everyone else responsible for winning the referendum ran away from the fallout.
The Leave vote has left us with a group of leaders who, having lit the fire, have all run away, saying someone else can clear up the mess. The Prime Minister who put us in the mess has resigned. All the people that put their cross down for Leave, saying this is what we want, they seem to be getting a group of people who say we can't stop immigration, we can't give 350 million. Oh, and by the way, there might be quite a lot of austerity. Sorry, bye.
Anyway, continuing on how not to do Brexit. Have an unspecifically worded referendum, which everyone had their own interpretation of, had no overwhelming support, such that the country would be left bitterly divided. And then, only then, to after winning the referendum, realise that you had no idea how to do it. I mean, who could have seen that this was going to end badly? I mean, even say, for instance, before the vote took place. Win or lose, this issue has already polarised the United Kingdom. And when that split goes right down the middle, it rarely ends well. Bravo, I guess this is the first taste of the inspired leadership that will make Britain great again.
Outside Europe, we could have prosperity, on a level that we can't even imagine now.
Oh, no, it's divisive, and for that very reason, this sort of thing is going to have a limited effect. People will see what they want to see.
Yeah, I agree. And
for a lot of people,
I think,
it's for the middle ground people, I guess, that we're doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think on the plus side, once this has been and gone, people aren't necessarily going to hate you for the position you took on it.
I think there's you take a look at the Quebec referendum, which was it 95 or something.
Oh, I don't know.
Quebec basically wanted the same thing. We want home rule, yada yada yada, split up the country, sort of secession type thing, and very close. And the repercussions from that have been going ever since.
And who could have seen that it was going to go badly after the referendum? A house divided against itself cannot stand.
So, victory for democracy?
Well, yeah, I guess.
Really?
Well, yeah.
What was the vote again?
52 to 48.
Resounding, the country has spoken?
It's not necessarily. There are quite a few who didn't get what they wanted.
So, are you familiar with an expression, a house divided against itself?
Yeah, so basically we're going to have to...
Do you know how that ends?
Oh, come on, don't be salty.
But Thunderfoot, even
No, I'm just want to know. I mean, congratulations, you won, but at what cost? The first one is you've got a divided country. Okay, let's see who's salty. Is the country more united or less now?
Yeah, that's the next thing to do, isn't it?
What, you think that you're going to unite the country now?
Well, no, but the Remain camp are going to have to reconcile things, aren't they?
After an election or a referendum, even if you lose the vote, you are entitled to go on making the argument. When a government in this country wins an election, the opposition does not just say, oh, that's absolutely right, I've got nothing to say for 5 years.
Brexiteers, I tried to warn you. I really did. I took it in the neck, video after video. Thousands unsubscribed. Sadly, sometimes you've just got to give people exactly what they voted for, exactly what was on the ballot before they realise that maybe this wasn't such a great idea after all. The punchy slogans laced with emotional imagery. It's great idealistically. In practice, maybe not so. A bitterly divided country was never going to come together with the unexpected victors taking every opportunity to polarise divisions.
Boom, make Britain great again, or something like that. Seriously, we need to be able to organise against these people, to show them that they are full of shit, to show the outside world that there is a strong faction within the Brexit debate that is pro-Brexit, very confidently so, and very happy that this is going on.
Yeah, I mean, when has such a plan ever failed to bring a country back together?
And we want Britain and May, the Conservatives, to do a good job of it. And thankfully, they look like they're doing a fairly good job of it now. But we should fight these people on social media when they're just constantly whining. We should, in fact, choose a hashtag. We should choose a hashtag that we can, whenever we see them... So I would say Make Britain Great Again as a hashtag. That's the one I'll be using. I'll probably title this video that.
Yet Sargon, who actually had a debate about this before the Brexit vote, thought that afterwards what we needed was a hashtag, a good old-fashioned hashtag activism. That'll bring the country back together. That'll save Brexit.
If we give a united front of just Britain is amazing, we're confident, we're going for this, everyone's on our side, this is going great for us, we will win. We will have a great deal from the EU. We will be able to put them over a barrel and to be able to just call the shots. And we can be magnanimous.
And that everyone else should just stop whining and get over it. Like, that's a convincing argument that'll work. Oddly enough, that hashtag campaign didn't work out so well. A sort of level of naivety that you should maybe expect from someone who thinks that this is how the British system works.
the way that they spend.
No, but let's imagine.
Do you have any way of
okay.
changing it?
Yeah, okay. Let's imagine
taxation without representation. Do you have any way of changing it?
Yes, actually, I do. I could start. Of course, I do. Of course, I do. I could start a political party. It could be a hot button issue. Millions of people could vote for me. I could storm into the parliament with a majority with this new party, and I could say, right, we have a democratic mandate to introduce laws to reform, to do whatever it is we need to do, and we could make it happen.
I mean, look. Let's be real. What you're proposing is just bullshit.
Well, I'm not saying it's likely.
The idea that
I'm not
you're
saying it's
actually
going to happen.
that you do any of this, right? So in practice, de facto,
Yeah.
you can't do it.
No, obviously not.
And within 6 months, he's gone from singing May's virtues to cursing her name with more emotionally charged language. Nice touch.
Theresa May gave her Brexit speech yesterday, and it was surprisingly good. And I have to say, I am actually genuinely impressed about just how firm Theresa May has been when it comes to the subject of Brexit. Because despite the numerous failings of Theresa May's premiership, and her weak and servile nature when it comes to Brexit and the European Union, so I would say Make Britain Great Again as a hashtag. That's the one I'll be using. I'll probably title this video that.
And at this point, I wonder why he blames the politicians for this. After all, they were the politicians that the people democratically chose to run the Brexit government.
If and when Brexit fails, and we are turned into a vassal state, a colony of the European Union, it will be Theresa May's fault.
You're on your own. You've got no one else to blame. If it goes down the shitter from here, you're on your own.
I mean, shouldn't they really be whining at the people who actually voted for these politicians rather than the politicians? I mean, wasn't his whole beef with leaving the EU that people should have the right to elect the politicians who make their laws?
No, you know that you have a vote in Europe, same as everyone else.
Yeah, but we don't vote for the people who make the laws. That's the difference. This is
but
the avenue of power that's blocked off from the demos doing their bidding, you know, and so it's actually. I mean, I feel like I have a lot of moral authority when it comes to this kind of thing because I'm very much interested in making sure that power is focused on what the voters want, because ultimately it is the voters who hold the power.
Well, that's what the voters did. Now he seems upset at democracy. But whatever, like I was saying, we have a name for people who make consistently bullshit predictions. Like May will win a majority in the election and Corbyn will resign in disgrace.
This is actually a really savvy political move, because this basically puts Theresa May in a position to form a new majority in Parliament, which will happen. If a snap election was called tomorrow, the Conservatives would win in a landslide, and they would win on the back of the Brexit vote. Because Theresa May's Chequers plan is basically a surrender to the European Union. This is why Theresa May is the most popular politician in Britain at the moment.
None of which happened. Or that Le Pen will win the French elections, which was comically bad. Or a man who said that the Young Turks were falling apart here. Or believing that the UK would make you thousands of pounds richer because he read it. So it must be true.
All that thing about, all we have to do is leave the EU and we can have growth.
Yeah, no, that's I don't. That's the thing. I don't want to present a utopian idea. And
having said that, that's almost what you did. I watched one of your videos on this, and you said that we send. You actually had the number in it that we send £100 to the EU, and if we left, you thought we would be £1,000 richer.
Well, no, I don't think that. That's just what the source I was quoting.
Come on, I don't care where that comes from. You've got to know.
The average person will have more money. The average person will have more money. They absolutely will.
You think that every pound that you don't send to Europe, you're going to get £10 richer?
No, I don't think it's going to be
That's what
drastic.
your numbers were.
No,
you said,
I'll have to find
it. We send £100 to Europe, and if we leave, we'll be £1,000 richer.
Okay, let's assume those numbers are vastly inflated then, right? Let's assume they are. Let's assume they are, right?
10% difference, I would maybe say, maybe.
Let's assume that there is no difference.
1,000% better off for leaving the
Okay, but let's assume those numbers are wrong then, right? But there is no doubt that the average...
Let's assume they're wrong. I mean, how could you believe them?
Well, I don't know. This is the thing.
Or that Brexit will be okay.
You think you're going to make Britain great again?
Well, me personally, probably not. But I think we'll do okay.
If and when Brexit fails and we are turned into a vassal state.
Or that May has shown amazing leadership.
And I have to say, I am actually genuinely impressed about just how firm Theresa May has been when it comes to the subject of Brexit.
And now he's putting out videos claiming that people haven't changed their minds on Brexit, when the graph that he's showing shows the exact opposite, that they have.
And don't make the mistake of thinking that this means that the British public have turned against the idea of Brexit, because they haven't. YouGov polling shows that Britain has been pretty damn consistent on the issue ever since the referendum itself. It's still roughly 50-50.
Yes, except before the majority thought that Brexit was a good idea, and now the majority think that Brexit is a bad idea. I mean, it's almost like in a democracy that people can change their minds. And surprisingly, his audience don't really seem to care about such minor trivialities as facts. Now, usually, you can tell who understands the situation best by who's making the best predictions. Like this wonderful prediction from Nigel Farage.
And in doing so, we now offer a beacon of hope to Democrats across the rest of the European continent. I hope this victory brings down this failed project and leads us to a Europe of sovereign nation states. I'll make one prediction this morning. The United Kingdom will not be the last member state to leave the European Union.
Oddly, Britain's amazing example didn't exactly encourage people to flee the EU. In fact, quite the opposite. There has been an almost entire Europe-wide increase in the favourability of how people view the European Union. My prediction was quite clear, that Brexit was going to be like changing the colour of something from military grey to ocean grey. It was the very opening argument that I had in the debate.
So yeah, Brexit. For what tangible gain? The way I see it is a very expensive way. You've seen Red Dwarf, yeah?
Love it.
Yeah, you know, when Rimmer's repainting everything from ocean grey to military grey.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing?
Come on, paint, 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 paint.
But why are they painting the colour the same colour it was before?
They're changing it from ocean grey to military grey, something that should have been done a long time ago.
Looks exactly the same to me.
No. That's the new military grey bit there, and that's the dowdy old nasty ocean grey bit there. Or is it the other way around?
Why? What the hell's the point of that? It's just a very expensive way of changing things from something to exactly... Something is a difference without a distinction.
A very expensive way of ending up almost exactly where you were to begin with, because eventually the trade rules that you have with the European Union, which is most of what the European Union actually does, will be replaced with other trade rules between the UK and the EU, which will be similar but worse for the UK. And it'll have vast cost and vast disruption attached to it, to end up almost exactly where you were to begin with. And guess what Brexit's shaping up to be? A very expensive change without a difference.
And I was racking my brains for what will actually be different. And I think the only physical difference you can point to is that Theresa May won't have to go to EU summits anymore, and there'll be no MEPs, there'll be no Nigel Farage standing up in the European Parliament.
I mean, everyone who's lived a significant portion of their life in the UK knows that the government has an amazing ability to screw up every large-scale project sent their way. You tell me what Great Britain has done since World War II where you can point to it and say, that government project was a resounding success. It was well thought out and competently executed.
Hilary, this is back in the early days of Cameron. That we scrapped the aircraft carriers and ordered some new ones from France. These were going to be, the first thing that England's had that would probably class as a real carrier in a long time. And they were going to fly the F-35 Lightnings off them. But the thing is, the carriers were going to arrive about 10 years before the planes did. But they'd actually scrapped the Harriers. The only planes that could actually fly off these, they actually scrapped them. So they're going to have the carriers for about 10 years with no planes. And in that gap period, there will be no carrier ability for the United Kingdom, right? Although they can fly helicopters off them, but what's the point of building
it's a pointless
fly
endeavour,
helicopters, right? I mean, and you worry about taxation without or did you vote for this?
What, did I vote for the EU?
No. Did you vote for this the way that they spend?
No, but let's imagine.
Do you have any
Let's imagine
taxation without representation. Do you have any way of changing it?
You would have had to have been outrageously naive not to have noticed a pattern. You would have had to have a particularly large and pasty arse with your head shoved uncomfortably far up it not to notice the pattern. And then to move forward with the expectation that Brexit would go swimmingly.
You think you're going to make Britain great again?
Well, me personally, probably not. But I think we'll do okay.
Meanwhile, people like Sargon seem to feel bitter that the EU might negotiate to their best advantage.
As Barnier said, the single market is our main economic public good. The UK is leaving the single market, they know the rules. Put simply, the European Union will remain intransigent against Theresa May's proposals, because they feel that her proposals will damage the integrity of the single market.
Yeah, who could have seen that coming? Meanwhile, the British position has been an absolute shambles from start to finish.
To be perfectly honest, I assumed that when Cameron said we're going to have this referendum, that I'd assumed he'd thought, well, people could vote to leave, people could vote to stay, but either way, we ought to be organised enough to have some idea of how we're going to handle things and approach this.
Absolutely.
And all it had is you guys fighting like cats in a sack because you've got no idea what you're doing. It's crazy.
Man at the back.
So the rough timeline is that Britain triggers Article 50 and 2 years later it leaves the EU under a negotiated agreement. It took about 9 months after the referendum to trigger Article 50 and a further year and a quarter to come up with a proposal. So here we are 2 years in with only 9 months left and Britain has only just announced its negotiating position, which was followed almost immediately by the guy in charge of Brexit negotiations and his subordinate, both resigning, meaning that with less than 9 months left, we have a completely new guy in charge. Oh, this is going well. Now that the government's actually announced its position and Brexiteers don't like it, they're hitting back with the most awesome of weapons. The online petition. Yeah, seriously. Like, there won't be enough chaos from merely the guy in charge resigning, but you want to change the government 3/4 of the way through the biggest and most complicated change the country has had in decades. And even at that, I hate to break it to you guys, but Labour's actually winning. And Nigel Farage is now threatening to destroy the Conservatives.
And if this Chequers agreement has not been broken, then I will very seriously consider putting my name forward to run as leader of UKIP again. And I can assure any Conservatives listening to this, sitting in marginal seats, who are not prepared to stand up and honour the wishes of the electorate, I will make damn sure in that situation that you all lose your seats.
Which, project a little further ahead, is going to leave the UK out of the EU and back with an old school Labour government. Oh boy, we all remember what that was like, right kids? In any event, the EU has done almost nothing but sit there and wait for the British to do something, to announce what their position was.
But don't forget, the EU haven't actually negotiated. They haven't gone to negotiate yet. This is still negotiating amongst themselves. And by the way, we only have about 10 weeks. If you look at when Parliament rises and falls and the conference season, which is coming up.
Almost all the wounds on Brexit are not because of Europe, they're because of the self-immolation of the UK. The fact that the UK took over 2 years merely to state what its position was wasn't Europe's fault, it was Britain's.
You're on your own. You've got no one else to blame. If it goes down the shitter from here, you're on your own.
An immolation which has surprised even me. I mean, I expect incompetence, but this? And bear in mind, I'm the informed one. I at least paid enough attention to the UK government to know that it tends to screw up big projects, let alone one which is on a short 2-year timetable. Something that kind of eluded many an idealist. It's not so much that Europe is trying to make an example of the UK. Even if it wanted to, it's not had a chance. The UK is just shooting itself in the foot. You know, because a house divided against itself. But even if the EU were trying to make an example here, what did you seriously expect when you voted for Brexit? That somehow you weren't 1/10 of the size of the EU, and that might significantly affect your bargaining position? Did you really expect the EU not to bargain in its best interests? And then there are those who say that we should just walk away, like this is a threat. No, that does more damage to the UK than to the EU. That's like saying, oh, hang on, I'm not going to shoot myself in the foot with a handgun, I'm going to use a shotgun. And many complain that the Brexit is not the Brexit they wanted. Well, I hate to break it to you, but you asked for Brexit and you're getting one. It's just more the Norway and Switzerland model, which basically means no change, except you no longer have a seat at the table where the rules are made. It's kind of like asking for flowers to be delivered and then complaining that you got carnations instead of roses. You asked for flowers, you got exactly what you wanted. You got exactly what was on the piece of paper. As for saying that Brexit would be great if it was done well, well, sure, maybe, whatever. But then again, isn't that what communists always say? That it would be great if it were done properly. So if you're going to take anything away from this, if you're going to try something like this, do it properly, with a real roadmap. Agree on the details before you start. But then again, if that's what we'd had, as Nigel said, no one would have understood it anyway. Which kind of makes it a moot point asking people's opinion of it. You know, this is why we don't ask for people's opinion about things like medical procedures or military strategy. So what can you do now? Well, not much, except take solace in the fact that if you get out of this with almost no change and it merely costing the nation about a juicero for every man, woman and child in the country. Honestly, at this point, I would call it a bargain. Because realistically, in the 9 months that you've got left, of which only a fraction of that is actually useful time, it's probably the best Brexit you're gonna get. Well, that, plus I tried to explain all of this beforehand. Just sadly people felt that others whose position changed from month to month were more convincing. And on that happy note, I figure I'm mostly drawing a line under this Brexit stuff. And I'm going back to things where people's feelings count a lot less than, say, for instance, the thermodynamics